7 extinct animals caught on camera. Moments before vanishing. Part 2. Extinction usually feels distant, ancient, something that happened long before cameras existed, but some species disappeared recently, quietly, while humans were still watching. In rare cases, cameras captured the final living proof of an entire species without anyone realizing it was the last time. No alarms, no warnings, just ordinary footage that became irreplaceable. Tonight, we're counting down 7 extinct animals caught on camera, moments before vanishing forever. Once the camera stopped rolling, there was nothing left to record. 7. The Heath Hen. Imagine a bird so common it once filled the skies of the eastern United States. So abundant that early settlers barely took notice. It was simply part of the landscape. And today, it no longer exists. The Heath Hen was a small, stocky bird related to prairie chickens. It lived along the East Coast, especially on Martha's Vineyard, thriving in open grasslands shaped by fire and grazing. For generations, it was hunted regularly for food, with little concern for its numbers. Over time, pressure began to build. Fires destroyed nesting areas. Development reduced open land. Disease spread through shrinking populations that could no longer recover. By the early 1900s, the unthinkable happened. Only one Heath Hen remained. His name was Booming Ben. Cameras captured him walking his territory alone, calling out, displaying, performing the same mating rituals his species had used for centuries. He behaved exactly as he always had, unaware that there was no one left to answer. In 1932, after a harsh winter, Ben was found dead. With him, the Heath Hen officially vanished. Years later, locals claimed to hear unfamiliar bird calls at dawn. Sounds they didn't recognize. Calls that didn't quite belong to anything known. No proof ever followed. So was Ben truly the last of his kind, or did something slip away unseen, just beyond the edge of record? 6. The Great Auk. Imagine a bird that looked like a penguin but lived in the North Atlantic. The Great Auk was flightless, black and white, and nearly 3 feet tall. It lived along the rocky coasts of Iceland, Greenland, and Northern Europe, nesting on remote islands where it had no natural predators. That made it vulnerable when humans arrived. For centuries, great auks were hunted in large numbers. They were taken for meat, rendered for oil, and later killed for their feathers. Because they couldn't fly, entire colonies could be wiped out quickly. By the early 1800s, only a few birds remained. In 1844, 2 great auks were captured on Eldey Island, Iceland. They were killed while defending their nest, and their single egg was crushed during the encounter. The event was documented. Those 2 birds are considered the last confirmed great auks ever seen alive. Afterward, sailors reported occasional sightings of large black and white birds at sea. But no evidence ever followed. And the species was never seen again. 5. The Japanese sea lion. Imagine coastal waters once filled with barking sea lions. Entire colonies resting on rocky shores, visible from land. The Japanese sea lion lived along the coasts of Japan and Korea. It was larger than most modern sea lions and gathered in dense, crowded groups, making it easy to spot and easy to hunt. They were killed for oil, meat, and fur. As fishing intensified, their food supply declined. During World War II, military activity and coastal disruption pushed the remaining population even closer to collapse. Early 20th century footage shows sea lions stretched across rocks, calm and completely unafraid of humans. At the time, these scenes felt ordinary. No one thought they were watching a species in its final years. The last confirmed sighting occurred in 1951. No carcass, no final capture, just absence. Even today, some fishermen report unfamiliar shapes offshore, but nothing has ever been confirmed. And the coastline remains quiet. 4. The golden toad. Imagine an animal so bright it looked unreal, almost artificial. The golden toad lived only in the cloud forests of Costa Rica. It was small, vivid orange, and found nowhere else on Earth. For years, it appeared reliably during the breeding season, emerging after heavy rains. Because of this consistency, researchers considered it stable and easy to monitor. Then, in the 1980s, something changed. Scientists began to notice a sudden and dramatic collapse. Rainfall patterns shifted. Dry seasons became longer and less predictable. At the same time, disease spread rapidly through amphibian populations across the region. In 1989, researchers photographed the last known golden toads during what should have been a normal breeding season. After that, none were ever seen again. There was no slow decline, no gradual warning signs. Despite repeated searches over the following decades, the species never reappeared. Surveys continued. The habitat remained. Some scientists still question whether a tiny population could survive hidden deep in the forest. But year after year, nothing returned. And the forest has given no answer. 3. Schomburgk's deer. Imagine a deer that once moved through wetlands in massive herds. So common that entire communities depended on its presence. Schomburgk's deer lived in the floodplains of Thailand. It was tall and slender, with large branching antlers that made it easy to recognize. For generations, it thrived in seasonal wetlands that flooded and receded each year. Then the landscape began to change. Wetlands were drained for agriculture. Hunting increased as populations became easier to reach. By the early 1900s, the species had vanished from the wild. Only a few individuals survived in captivity. Photographs show the last known deer standing quietly behind fences, far from the wetlands where the species evolved. The final confirmed individual died around 1938. But the story didn't fully end there. For decades afterward, villagers reported seeing similar deer in remote marshes. No photographs were taken. No remains were recovered. And without proof, the sightings faded into uncertainty. 2. The Barbary Lion. Imagine the lion of ancient Rome. The lions displayed in royal courts and forced into gladiator arenas. That was the Barbary lion. It once lived across North Africa, from Morocco through Algeria and into Egypt. Compared to most modern lions, it was larger, with a darker, heavier mane that extended down the chest and belly. Historical accounts describe it as powerful and imposing, often associated with royalty and empire. For centuries, the species was hunted. Some were captured alive and transported across continents for entertainment. Others were killed to protect livestock or as trophies. As human settlement expanded, forests and hunting grounds disappeared, fragmenting the remaining populations. By the early 1900s, the Barbary lion was barely holding on. Only scattered individuals remained in remote mountain regions. Photographs from the late 19th and early 20th centuries show Barbary lions pacing in zoos and private collections. They appear calm, healthy, but completely removed from the landscapes they once ruled. The last confirmed wild sighting occurred in 1925. Today, some researchers believe traces of Barbary lion genetics may still exist in captive lion populations, but no pure individuals have ever been confirmed. And the true Barbary lion, the animal that once ruled North Africa, was never seen again. 1. Steller's sea cow. Imagine a creature larger than a bus, slow-moving, gentle, and completely unafraid of humans. Steller's sea cow lived in the cold waters of the Bering Sea, near Alaska and Russia. It was a massive marine mammal, related to manatees, reaching lengths of over 30 feet and weighing several tons. It fed almost entirely on kelp, floating near the surface in shallow coastal waters. That made it easy to find. In 1741, European explorers encountered the species for the first time. The sea cows showed no fear. They didn't flee. They didn't dive. They were hunted for meat, fat, and skin. Entire groups could be killed in a short time. There were no limits, no protections, no understanding of how rare the animal already was. Within 27 years of its discovery, the population collapsed. The last confirmed sighting occurred in 1768. There is no film, no photograph, only drawings and written descriptions from explorers who didn't realize they were witnessing the end. Steller's sea cow disappeared almost as soon as humanity noticed it existed. And that may be the most unsettling part of its story. What makes these stories disturbing isn't just extinction. It's how quietly it happens. Cameras roll. life continues. And only later do we realize what was lost. Somewhere right now, footage exists that may one day be seen as the final record of something alive today. And once something vanishes, the only thing left is proof that it was ever here at all. If you don't want to miss stories like these, the ones history almost erased, subscribe to the channel. Because once they're gone, all we have left is the record.